Yo, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy Deep Art, and we back with another video. We got a special video for today. I'm not even sure where this video is going to go, whether it's going to go on Deep Rhythm or Deep Art. But anyway, we got a special video for y'all today because we got a few topics that we really want to talk about. This might even go on critical thought, but probably deep art, but it might go on critical thought. So the thing I want to talk about today in this video is protect your brain, right? So it's protecting your brain. I say this on a scientific level, due to the fact that the brain is the center where the interconnection between your connection to the universe, your connection line to other people, your connection line to the atmosphere, to all the resources, equipment, all of the, beings, organisms, and everything just involved in the ecosystem, right? And within an ecosystem or within, the planet, right? All things involved within the planet and the ecosystems is under direct median and direct, is under direct control in terms of a line of communication from in between your brain, right? Not necessarily you, but your brain, right? Your brain. So we say protect your brain because your brain is what allows you to give off the correct intended signals for you to be able to properly communicate with the universe. If your brain is not properly functioning, and your brain is not, if you're not getting proper rest, you're not taking care of your brain properly, if you're not properly regulating your self-esteem levels, your what you deal with, if you're not properly regulating your self-care, self-love, and these things aren't probably getting regulated in the brain, then this makes it this much more difficult to be able to properly communicate what you intend to communicate, because now the brain is operating and regulating on a level that is not allowing you to be able to communicate as you intended to. So this is very important to understand, due to the fact that your brain runs on autopilot. It runs on autopilot because the brain is a part of the body. So just as you would train a muscle and just as you would train a neuron, your brain will run the same way as well. Sometimes due to institutionalization, institutionalization will cause the brain to perform a certain way. For instance, in a state of poverty, someone within a state of poverty would a poverty mindset would not allow the brain would not allow themselves to operate at a higher standard or at a higher level due to institutionalization. Institutionalization is what happens when injustice, immorality against human being, becomes normalized, right? So now the victim the victim of an oppressive system becomes immoral. They become immoral to themselves, and this is where institutionalization comes in, and a backwards or off brain, a backwards mindset comes into play as well, right? So now it becomes harder to communicate with other people because you're not seeing eye to eye. You're not seeing on a human level, right? And you may, as an individual, as someone who's on a, as an institutionalized person, may treat the person you're speaking to at a higher regards than yourself in terms of a human being, right? Or vice versa, who knows, right? Depending on how you've been institutionalized. So this is why we say proper brain care and wiring of the brain is that very crucial and that very important, because a lot of things we go through aren't intended. They aren't of our control and aren't intended. And we get programmed, and, the brain gets programmed to think certain ways. And due to the fact that the brain gets trained to think in certain ways, it becomes that much, it becomes that much more detached and more difficult for us to achieve our goals in, this society. And it also, makes it this much harder for us to move around, because now the brain is not wired in a state that allows us to be able to execute and express ourselves the way we intend to. All right. So brain care is the first subject they got, which is very important. That's the importance of brain care, right? Because, if you can't protect your brain, you can't give up the proper signals that you intend to in order to communicate to the universe at the end of the day, right? You could be tired as all get out. You could be tired of shit. And you could just be tired of shit and just be walking on just dead limbs, right? And nobody know it, right? You could just be tired of shit and then nobody really understand it. So then the signals that you give off in your brain, it's off signals, right? It's not off signals due to the fact that, you're fucked up. Well, you are fucked up, right? You're giving off signals because you're tired of shit. What you're communicating isn't what you intend to communicate. What the brain is giving off isn't what it intends to get off. That's why they keep you at a state of tired, right? So you don't give up the proper, correct signals ever, And there was going to be a relentless attack, a relentless attack to make sure that you don't give up the proper, correct brain signals. But the brain signals that you give off have to be are a direct result of the state of your own brain, of the state of your own health, right? So health, the brain's care, right? The care of the brain has to be something that is very important, right? Because with proper brain care, this allows you to give up the correct signals. So the brain literally has to be fed, it has to have water, it has to have the proper correct nutrition. It has to be rested. And number two, one thing, right? The brain has to be properly wired in a state of self-esteem for its own self. If you're, living in a impoverished environment, there's a few things that can take down, a person's esteem, which we talked about, in a past video. But in this video, we want to talk about just strictly and most importantly, just the wiring of the brain, period. Because if the brain is not in proper health, in care, it can't think and give out the signals that it intends to, give off, right? It becomes that much harder to communicate, right? Because people don't hear what you say, they hear what you feel, or they hear with the signals, they hear what you give off, right? And the thing about that is you can't control the signals you give off when you're tired. You can't control what you intend to express when you've been told and you've been trained to be at a low esteem of yourself, and everybody around you has been trained to be at a higher esteem of themselves, right? If you live in an environment that institutionalizes you, right? An institutionalized environment, right? And this is what we talk about. This is what we talked about in my last video, right? So that's the important thing that we really wanted to discuss in this video is training the brain to be able to operate in those signals, right? Taking care of your brain and the health of your brain, because if the health of your brain is not properly taken care of, then you can't necessarily give off the signals you intend to give off. You can't, fight your own. You can't even properly think the thoughts that you would want to think anymore, because your brain is clouded by its lack of rest, its desire for rest, its burnout, right? And there's this thing called burnout, right, where the brain burns out. So now burnout happens when if you consistently work, burnout happens, right? When you consistently work, you overwork yourself, right? You work yourself past exhaustion, right? This doesn't really happen to people because most people understand, the difference between working hard and then working to burnout. So working to burnout is what an athlete would do, right? So an athlete would work to burnout in order to burn themselves out to try to progress to something, right? They'd overwork themselves, right? Now, this is good when you're on the basketball court. But when you come off the basketball court now, and you're institutionalized to burn yourself out, when you try to get into a line of communication, a line of civilization, speaking, and operating within societal structure and this sort of thing, the line of communication is now, your brain has now been institutionalized to burnout. So now, when you communicate with others, speaking in a state of burnout is people you don't address people out of state of what you really think. You address people in a state of burnout, right? So that's the real problem and issue with with the brain and this thing called burnout, right? The brain, the burnout, right? The short circuiting, the short wiring, right, of the brain. It's like speaking to a deformed system. You know what I'm saying? And just it's like speaking to a deformed system that has been short circuited and is just off wiring and just malfunctioning and all the types of stuff, trying to communicate it to like you communicating to a person. It's like talking to a malfunctioning machine with electronic like electrical short circuit spouting out of it, right? And a baseball didn't at the top of his head, standing there trying to communicate with it like a normal person, like a normal thing. It's not, and that's what I see, It's like trying to communicate with a short circuiting system or contraption. So that is so much deceiving, man. That's the deception. That's the deception. But anyway, yeah. In terms of this is probably this is the roughest video. This is probably one of the most roughest videos I ever made. But in terms of the brain, right, and these type of malfunctions and things, like this is